Hey there guys, if you want to support the channel and get access to our exclusive Discord community of Ruler School, which provides tons of great community content, including exclusive game nights, giveaways, and tournaments, go ahead and check out the link down below and consider supporting the channel on Patreon. Thank you guys so much, and enjoy the video. Hey there guys, DMO73 here, bringing you a feature match for the week. So I'm trying something a little interesting here, as you'll notice from the title. Europe decided to try an experimental ban list where they banned Prisia, Griffin Racing Across the Darkness, and Captain Hook the Pirate. So I decided to see what a Gryphonless Fox deck would look like. So I'm trying it out. So there's not a single Griffin in this list. The only chimeras are 4 Manticore and 4 Amit, and it kind of turned into a little bit of a control style where Fox became, yes, pressure, but the chimeras kind of came out more as answers to things that then became threats after they had successfully answered, as opposed to just general pressure. So it was pretty interesting, and I'm playing against David, who is playing a white, blue, green Shaela control. Oh, and by the way, this Gryphonless Fox list was kind of initially created by my friend Paul Reissmann. He and I talked a little bit back and forth about it, but he was the one who kind of came up with the core, so big credit to him. And then it was really fun to tweak it back and forth. So definitely a very interesting place to take Fox. I think there's still some work with it, but I definitely think that he's still a very fun and probably pretty capable deck. So I'm going to play here, first Killing Stone, play into a Tama, draw a card. With the Fox now, you're definitely flipping way later. You're not trying to flip very early. You're really trying to get to that Kitsune King so you can kind of start chaining your chimeras together and really putting your opponent in a position where they just can't do anything. He gets that first Light Vapors, doesn't really do anything out of it, goes to my turn, get a Black Silence, and use it to cast Planting Beans. Now, normally this would be used to cast Griffin, and David here triggers his colors here. He thinks he has green, he does not, so he can't cast that Millennia Bond, which is why I'm safe to play the Planting Beans. So now, while I would normally grab Demonic Dead, as that would be the big play to just start off all the Griffins, remember, I don't have any, so instead, I'm going to actually send Lilia's Petal to the grave so that I can either bring it back with the Frigg in my deck, back to my hand, or I can summon it with Dark Revolution. I think at this point I have a Dark Revolution in my hand, so I'm trying to kind of base it based on that. Play a second card here, play a second Tama, and then draw a card. Now the reason why I'm taking the chance here with the Tama is, 1, draw power is always good, especially now that the deck is definitely a lot slower, and 2, I already know that Shaela blue control lists definitely have a problem dealing with creatures of already established boards, so even Tamas over time become pretty powerful and can help really close the game essentially from all the chip damage. David hits that Kakia's Stone of Sorrow, pays the 3 life for it, which I'm not necessarily sure was needed, but needing the green is probably important. Goes to my turn, call for another stone, get another Killing Stone, which is also really nice. Once the deck has 2 Killing Stones, it's usually pretty good, because you at least get 2 Chimeras out, which, you know, is like 2 Amits, 2 Manticores, and you can really start kind of ripping your opponent's hand to shreds or their board. I'm going to swing in with the 2 Tamas, get the damage there, and then try to play a Fox Spirit. Again, trying to put more pressure on the board here, just to see what sticks. And then I'll go ahead and pass the turn. Calling for Stone, he gets that Light Vapors. Now I know he has that Millennia Bond, and he has a control deck, so he's got access to lots of control things, especially to cancel spells. Most of the stuff nowadays, Severing Winds is the only thing that can cancel anything at this point, or Vanish, but I'm pretty sure his deck doesn't run Vanish, being primarily blue. So something like Dark Revolution I have to be pretty careful of. Hard casting, Dark Revolution is safest, but I know he has that Millennia Bond because of his misreveal earlier. He plays that Alice, but it doesn't have access to God's Art yet, which is great for me, because I happen to actually top deck into a Heteroclite Excalibur here, so now I can just get it off the board and not have to deal with it and continue the chip damage from my creatures while he has to struggle to keep up. So he can choose to either use his Millennia Bond here, which would be still fine for me because it's only Alice isn't a super big threat, or he can let it get killed and I can chip him for another 7 damage, take him down to 24. decides to let it go through, so I go down to 35. I'll attempt to poke him for 2, and then he decides to use Amaterasu's Foresight here. I don't necessarily agree with this play. 7 damage, yeah, sure, is taking him down to 24, but I don't think it was necessarily the right play, because now, you know, my board could get significantly more oppressive later, and he might not have that, you know, Amaterasu's anymore, which would be bad for him. Gonna cast the Demonic Dead here, or sorry, planting beans to ship the Demonic Dead, so that I can kind of start cycling, because here, you know, I've got access to Demonic Dead, reviving the Kitsune King, all kinds of stuff, potentially, so I have to kind of play this smart. So Demonic Dead can help me kind of cycle, as well as just being another free creature to bring out on his turn, and start bringing the pressure to 1,000 damage per turn that he has to try to answer. Calls for a stone, gets another Deepwood. He's got that Shaela's Foresight, which is great, because he can just shuffle my graveyard in place, which is pretty good for him. Especially since I have the Demonic Den and the Revival spell, he could potentially really mess me up there. Also has a Dawn of the Earth, so he's got lots of ways to be able to potentially mess me up. I'm going to go to my turn, call for Stone. And I know he has that spell. I only know that he has the Millennia Bond, so I'm trying to cast the Frigg to maybe grab the Heteroclite Excalibur and the Lilia's Petal back to my hand, and then he brilliantly uses that Shaela's Foresight. I can't really cancel it. It's his first card for the turn. It's going to shuffle my deck, and I do make a misplay here. I still did not grab the Demonic Dead during the end phase of his turn, which I definitely could have done, which might have even baited out the Shaela's Foresight. Sure, I maybe would have had to pay 1,000 life for it, but at the same time, then I would have known to not have to worry about this Frigg right now, and I probably could have been a little bit smarter about the play. So that was a little bit of a misplay on my end, but I'm still going to get a good 7 damage here unless he has another Foresight, which is nice. Take him down to 24. So now I've essentially got him on a 2-turn clock just with chip damage, and I haven't even used Fox. So he has to kind of prioritize here whether he wants to try to deal with my creatures on board, or he wants to be able to stop any Fox things that comes out. He decides, unfortunately, to play this Ia, which I don't think is the right call, especially since he's got Dawn of the Earth, Severing Winds, Fair Spell, and the thing to bounce a card back to the top of my, or to my hand or the top of my deck. He's essentially tapped out for the turn, so now if I only play 1 card, I'm just like completely safe, which is pretty comfortable position for Fox. You see I have that Dark Revolution too, which is pretty nice. Dark Revolution plus Frigg is really a nice little combo, especially against control decks, because you can cast, bring back Frigg with Dark Revolution, and then you can grab the Dark Revolution back with Frigg, so you can kind of just infinitely have Friggs just with 1 instead of needing multiple like you used to. Swing with the Tama, take him down to 2,000. He'll try to block or the 2 Tamas and bring him down to 2,000. I'll try to swing with the Fox Spirit. He decides to block with the Ia. It's at this point I'm like, oh, do I swing with the Frigg? Do I use the Frigg so that I can cycle it again, or do I wait? I think I'd rather get the 8 damage from hitting him with Frigg. So I actually go ahead and decide to sacrifice the Fox Spirit and a Tama to Fox here. It'll take him down to 19, which is great, put me back up to 36. And right now I have a hand just full of cancel spells and stuff, which is not, you know, the 2 Dark Revolutions are nice, but there's nothing really in my grave that I want to revive. Having the 2 Dark Revolutions, though, is pretty nice in case something dies, but with the 4 Will, I also can make pretty good use of the Severing Winds in my hand. If I need to, I can just hard cast it. Now I make a little bit of weirdness here. I start to kind of debate which one I want to grab. I'm like, Manticore Griffin, and I start to grab Manticore, then I think about grabbing, Manticore, Amit. I start to think about grabbing Amit, and then I'm like, wait a minute, Ia can't get targeted by anything. That doesn't make any sense, and I would have to kill my own Amit. So I'm like, wait a minute, let's go back here. I grab the Manticore, and decide to look at his hand. Ia has that barrier from Resonator abilities, so it's a pretty big deal. I see that nice hand full of cancel spells. Thankfully, there's not a ton in terms of creatures, so just whittling him down is helping me a lot. He is not doing a ton of damage every turn, and he can't really deal with my other stuff necessarily as easily. And then I'm going to spend the floating and then 1, and I'm actually going to go use Lilius Petal's Assistant to grab the Tama and draw another card. Now, the reason why I like this Assistant, this was actually from Aaron Miles when he was kind of playing Fox before the idea of a ban. It's a 1-card Chimera in the sense that it's just immediately a way to be able to have your 2 materials for a Fox effect if needed, especially when you have something like Tama in the grave and you can draw a card off of it, so it kind of cantrips and sets up a play for the next turn. Now again, like I said, the whole point of this kind of style of Fox is to use Fox as like an answer to things that then becomes a threat afterwards, rather than being a threat that then serves as a magnet for their answers. So it's kind of like Fox becomes a punish mechanic. When they try to make a play, you punish it by using Fox, and then suddenly they're left with a 9/9 flyer or a 15/15 on the ground that they have to try to answer. The problem for David is that there is a lot of damage on board. Just the Frigg and the 2 Tamas by themselves is enough to easily kill him here, and he unfortunately does not have nearly enough to be able to stop everything. I start to consider just letting him kill the Frigg because I have that Dark Revolution in my hand, and then I'm like, wait a minute, Ia doesn't have unblockable, I can just block with the Tama, it's not a big deal. And he doesn't have any response to that. Now, he could have used that Cleansing Rain to bounce the Tama back to my hand, so that he could still try to kill the Frigg, but at that point I probably just sacrifice the Tama and the Messenger and try to force a play with Fox. And then maybe even, do something else, just rip his hand apart, make him have to spend more will, and then he still can't answer the 1 Manticore I have on field, and he just dies to Manticore plus Tama. So I swing at him for 2 at the beginning of my turn with the Tama, again, to put him in a position where I'm now forcing him to have the answers to everything, and then I'll call Stone. So at this point, not only is Manticore lethal, but also if I do a Fox effect here, even if it doesn't resolve, the Frigg is lethal as well. So he's going to use the Shaela's Foresight to try to shuffle my graveyard, put the Manticore back into my deck, and draw a card. And I'm deciding how I want to deal with that at this point. So I'm going to float green, sacrifice the 3 guys, take him down to 800. Let me look at his hand with a Manticore. I see he's got Severing Winds and 2 Farer's spells and a Dawn of the Earth. The Dawn of the Earth is definitely not very attractive here, but it's also not a terribly big deal because I'm trying to get him to have to deal with the Manticore. So if he can't deal with the Manticore, I'm trying to do it in such a way that he has to tap out. So then the Dawn of the Earth becomes not a problem, and Prank could just swing in to finish it off. Now with the Dawn of the Earth, if I swung in the Frigg and he was able to save the will, he could untap his Ia and then just block it, which would be pretty bad for me. But at the same time, like I said, trying to tap him out is where I want to be. So he uses the Farer's spell, try to severing his Farer's spell. He could have just as easily done Farer's spell back, which actually would have put him in a pretty good position here, because then he could have used the Cleansing Rain and answered the Frigg too. But he decides not to, so that's kind of a misplay on David's end. So the Manticore goes back into my deck, he shuffles the rest of my deck together. I still have the 1 Manticore on board, which is nice if I need to for next turn. Everything else gets shuffled in, including the Killing Stone. And then I'll just swing for the 8 to finish the game. Yeah, so if he had used the Cleansing Rain on the Frigg, put it back in my hand, then I just would have gotten recast next turn. and I still would have had the Manticore on board that I would have had to deal with. My life total was such that taking an EA hit was not a big deal, and at that point he was just out of resources. So this time again, he gets to choose whether or not he wants to go first or second, or he gets to choose this time since he lost, and he actually chooses to go on the draw here, which I think is kind of not the right call against Fox anymore. I think you still want to go on the play, especially since Fox has to be kind of slower. You don't necessarily care about them having the Energize token anymore, because the primary reason Fox wanted the Energize was to be able to do turn 1 Messenger if they didn't get their turn 1 Killing Stone. But I'm not playing Messengers in this variant of the list because, again, I'm being very patient about hitting my Killing Stones, so I don't really necessarily need to see them super early. Both of these games I happen to hit at turn 1, which turns out to be great for me, so I'm going to go ahead and send the Mnemonic Dead so I can start putting pressure on him early. But, you know, it's not really that big of a deal. Once the deck has 2 Killing Stones and then, like, you know, a couple of creatures on board and stuff to be able to deal with it, then it starts to become a threat, because I get at least 2, and then that's 2 Manticores and 1800 damage in the air. But anytime before that, it's not a big deal. He hits that Deep Woods, does nothing with his turn, unfortunately, but he does have a cancel spell if he needs to. I'm going to go ahead and play this Abdul here. Also missed the chance to be able to revive the Demonic Dead and hit him for 5, or for 3. Main reason for that, I think, is probably just that I wanted to maybe not have to pay in case he decided to do Foresight or something on me like that. But I still think it would have been worth it, because, you know, what's the worst that happens? I lose Demonic Dead and Severing Winds, or in spinning, in Planting Beans, and he loses one of his, like, shuffle spells. Wouldn't have been too big of a deal. I'm going to try to, this turn, however, bring back the Demonic Dead since he taps out for that Alice. And then, so now I have some threats on board to start pinging him to death. Again, it's all about the slow chips for this deck. Thankfully, I have the Heteroclite Excalibur again to deal with the Alice before it gets a chance to Goddard, so it is going to get killed. I'll take the 5 damage from it, go down to 3,000 after I paid the 5, and then I'll swing for him for 9. So again, without even having to flip Fox, I've got him on a nice little clock. I've got creatures here that, you know, are going to slowly be pinging him. I start to do Planting Beans, and he starts to say okay, and then he goes, wait a minute, no, I actually wanted to Severing Winds that, which is fine, because I didn't see my deck, and also we're playing it local, so we're pretty chill about it. So I just was like, okay, sure, you can do the Severing, which is fine by me, because it's one less Severing I have to deal with later. Once again, he's got a handful of cancel spells, and he does have some bounce potential, but it doesn't necessarily really deal with the stuff that I have on board. The Cleansing Rain here puts the Demonic Bat on top of my deck, which is probably okay, but at the same time, it does tap him out, and all he's dealing with a 3/3. I probably would have, if anything, used the Cleansing Rain on the Abdul, or waited until my turn to make it happen. I'm going to try to swing for 6 here. He's going to let that happen. Kick him down to 25. And then I'm going to make an attempt to play this Kitsune King, knowing that he probably has Keys Call. It's kind of a big risk, but at the same time, it's not a big deal. He doesn't have the Keys Call, though, which is really, really nice, because now I just have these Fox Spirits, and I can start cycling stones, which is excellent for me. David goes to his turn, sees that Seabed Investigation, which doesn't necessarily help him too much right now. Once again, he's staring down right now 2,000 damage just on board. So he's really got to try to answer that immediately, otherwise he's just in real bad shape. So he actually sees pretty interesting Seabed here. He gets to keep 2 of them. Keys is called Dawn of the Earth, Amaterasu's Foresight ×2. All of these are pretty interesting. The Keys' Call helps him if I try to go for a Manticore, which is great. The Amaterasu's helps him from not dying from my board. And then the Dawn of the Earth also helps him if I try to go for something like Manticore, because he can just cast it and I can just not get anything off of it. I probably go with the Dawn of the Earth here. I think he makes the right call. Dawn of the Earth and Amaterasu's Foresight. So that he can try to deal with the any kind of direction I want to take. He can deal with a Griffin if I go for that. He can go deal with me just attacking him for everything if I go with that as well. Now that I've got Kitsune King out here, I'm not terribly concerned about flipping. I've got one Killing Stone. I can try to cycle. He plays the Amaterasu's Foresight here. I'm debating as to whether or not I let that happen. I'm going to go ahead and pay 1 and float it. It'll be black. And then I'm going to sacrifice the 2 Fox Spirits after making one of them Darkness. Now that he's tapped out, I'm not terribly concerned. He might grab a Keys' Call. He might have grabbed the Keys' Call too, but at the same time, I'm still going to get to ramp a stone off of Kitsune King, and he doesn't actually have the Keys' Call here, so I'm in a pretty good shape. I'm going to go ahead and grab the Severing Winds. Taking some notes here on my boogie board off the side. If you guys aren't aware, the tournament policy has been updated, so you can use electronic note-taking in tournaments now, which is nice. Or like electronic life pads and stuff. You can't use... I think you can't use a phone, from what I've been told from Robert Hebert, that in the United States anyway, he's not going to allow phones. But things like boogie boards can be used now, which is great for me because I find that when I'm using a small life pad, I'm discouraged from taking notes because I don't have a lot of space to work with. But on a boogie board, it's nice because you have plenty of space. And then you don't have to lug around like a ton of sheets of paper. Looking at what he wants to do here. He's not going to take any damage, so there's no reason to swing, but at the same time I'm going to go ahead and pass the turn. Then before he resolves his recover, I'm going to go ahead and shuffle my deck. My stone deck with the Killing Stone to get it back in there. He's debating whether or not he wants to use that Spinning Aqua Soul already to grab something back from his graveyard. So you can either grab the Severing Winds or you can grab the Amaterasu's Foresight. I probably wouldn't have grabbed the Foresight there, but at the same time, you know, it's fine. He has really opened himself up to a Severing Winds here. But at the same time, Amaterasu's Foresight is something that would happen on my turn. He also quickly catches here in just a second that he forgot to put the Aqua Soul in the grave from casting it. So now I know he's got access to the Amaterasu's. Like, I know most of his hand. There's only one unknown in his hand at this point, which happens to be that Charlotte. So I have, like, maximum effectiveness here in terms of when to use those Severing Winds in my hand. He's not going to be able to draw cards with the Charlotte because of the Abdul. I can just, you know, slowly poke him out while trying to deal with that Amaterasu's Foresight. So I'll recover because he doesn't do anything. Call for a stone with Fox. Hit another Black Silence. Attempt to do the most damage, or attempt to poke for 3. Cast that Amaterasu's Foresight. And I do something kind of really risky here. I'm trying to make him use as many cards as possible. I'm going to cast the Severing Winds. It is my first card of the turn to try to stop the Amaterasu's Foresight. He's going to use the Farer's Call. And I know he still has the Dawn of the Earth, so trying to Fox in response to that would be pretty punishing. So I'll use the second Severing Winds to try to cancel the Farer's Call. He'll use Spinning Aqua Soul to then try to grab that Severing Winds. And then I'm going to say that's fine. And then he uses that Severing Winds on my Severing Winds. So all in all, he gets to stop the damage for the turn. But I only spent 2 cards there, and I got rid of 4. And I didn't have to use Griffin or anything else, so now I'm going to be able to just rip his hands to shreds if I need to. He's down to 3 cards, only one of which is an unknown, and I can be pretty safe at this point. Let him draw for the turn. Calls for a stone, gets a light vapors, pays 4, and plays the Charlotte. He won't get to draw a card off of it, but he had to put something out to prevent himself from getting killed. The Charlotte is unfortunately a 6/6, so even my Kitsune King can answer it, but he gets to answer. He has the Dawn of the Earth still if he wants to try to deal with a potential Fox play or anything else of that nature. So it's not too bad, but he's still taking at least 1700 probably. At the littlest amount of damage based on what's in his hand. So I'll call a stone with Fox. Hit another Killing Stone here, which is great with Kitsune King out. I'm pretty much never going to run out of Killing Stones at this point. Swing in the air for 9. He accepts that damage. Goes down to 15. Swing in the air for, or swing on the ground for 8. Blocks that with the Charlotte. I'm fine with that. It's just gets it off the board. Swing on the ground for 6. Takes him down to 9. Swing on the ground for 3. Takes him down to 6. Actually, he could have used the Dawn of the Earth to untap the Charlotte, give it +2/+2, then draw a card, which would have made it a 10/10 and killed my Kitsune King. But the response is probably that after that happens, I'm probably going to go ahead and just kill it with an Amit. So I said to be kind of cheeky here. I'm going to play an Abdul and then attempt to play a Severing Winds. I don't have an Odin, or a Spinning Myth. I don't have a Myth in my hand, but I'm trying to do the Torrent. And he happens to have the Millennia Bond there. So it's another cancel spell out of the way. Continually just kind of having knowledge of his hand. Now that I know he can't possibly... now that I know I have the two Killing Stones here, I'm actually just going to go ahead and sacrifice my guys, do another 100 damage to him here with the Killing Stone, pull out a Manticore, and have kind of perfect knowledge of his hand moving into his turn. I'm going to take that Dawn of the Earth, finally get that out of the way. So now I can Fox safely on his turn unless he happens to top deck one, which is also not very likely since I can easily just make a second... like I'm doing here, hit him for another 100 damage after he draws, but before he recovers, make another Manticore, and just tear his hand to shreds after he's drawn for the turn. Whole purpose of this, again, is to put him in just an unwinnable game state, so he can't possibly deal with both Manticores because I've looked at his hand and pulled out all of his answers. Not worried about the Keys' Call because I don't have any enter effects to deal with at this point, so I'm letting him keep it. He's already drawn for the turn, so having a Charlotte and an Iya is nothing really that bothers me. He does flip Shaela here, which does let him draw a card, which is pretty interesting. Draws one, and I'm just noticing it now that he actually drew the second card from the top of his deck. I don't think he realized it. Somehow it got like jumbled up and he got to take the Shayla's Foresight. But he actually just uses it right away to just shuffle in my deck, which doesn't, and try to draw him into something else. So he actually just draws into the Iya that he would have had anyway. And my graveyard's kind of irrelevant at this point. Passes the turn there knowing that the game is over, but he's going to let me take my turn anyway. I'm going to call a stone, get a Killing Stone off of it. I'm going to play the Tama. He's going to Keys Call it. He's going to get to draw a card. I'm going to go ahead and sack it to kill itself in response to the Keys Call. He still gets to draw the card. I'm just being kind of cheeky with it. I'll pay the 4 to do Dark Revolution on the Tama. Lets me draw a card. And I happen to draw into Final Battle, and I know he doesn't have a Severing Winds in hand. So just as a form of just being silly, I'm going to pay 24 life, going down to 9 life to cast Final Battle and kill his Shaela. So now the weather is not raining, and my Manticores can just swing in the air, not have to fly through a thunderstorm to kill him. So that is the match. Huge thanks to David for playing. Thanks to Paul for shipping me the core of this list and for working with me on it. Lots of fun. Check out the deck profiles later this week. And until next time, this is TMO73 signing off.